Please take your seats. Secretary, please read the order.
Debate on vote number 8, National Treasury State Security Appropriation Bill.
The Honorable Minister, over to you. Only 25 minutes, Honorable Minister. Is your mic on? Okay. We're surprised why your voice was so low.
You know,
Okay, proceed, Honorable Minister.
House Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Ministers in the Presidency, Namasonto Mutaung and Kenny Morolong, the Chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, Honorable Jerome JJ Make, the Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Doris Dakute, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, the coordinator of the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, Ambassador Tony, commonly known as Gap Simang, the leadership and management of the State Security Agency and NICOC, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, the Macheron. As I take this podium to table budget vote 8 of the State Security Agency, and over the journey our national security system has traversed over the years, I'm reminded to pay tribute to the men and women who have endeavored to overhaul our intelligence agency from a repressive state security system into a democratic intelligence community. In this regard, allow me to express on behalf of the South African intelligence community and my own behalf, our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Ambassador Billy Masetla, who passed on Sunday, the 14th of May, 2023. He was a South African intelligence officer and he served his country as a second Director General of the South African Secret Service in a democratic South Africa between 1996 and 1999. And he also served as the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, a freedom fighter who led the student and youth movements as a founding member of the Congress of South African Students, commonly known as COSAS, that was instrumental in the formation of the South African Youth Congress, otherwise known as SAICO, and a former leader of both the ANC Youth League and the African National Congress at the national executive level. I have many anecdotal stories to tell about the late Ambassador Masetla and the democratic intelligence community. However, my memory of him is invoked because we're tabling this budget vote when events of the past, some of it recent, have thrown us back to grapple with the question of what are the expectations for a democratic intelligence community. Florina Christian Madej and Caroline Halliday, when writing about the role and purpose of intelligence in a
Honourable members, it's Tanya Lyons from the National Assembly table. It seems that we have lost our link to M46. We're trying to re-establish it. Honourable members, there is still a technical issue in M46. We've alerted our team in M46. Business is currently suspended, so they are just trying to resolve that. As soon as they've resolved that, we will come back online.
What honorable members? It looks like the technical glitch has now been sorted. With powers vested in me, I've made a determination that we will start from the beginning with the minister for proper flow and completeness. Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Chairperson, the Chief Whip, Honorable Doris Tagude, Honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, the coordinator of the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, NICOC, Ambassador Tony Gap Nsimang, who's also serving as the Acting Director General, the leadership and executive management of the state security agencies, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, Dimacheroni. As I take this podium, vote 8 of the state security agents, and I'm reminded of the journey our national security system has traversed over the years. I am reminded to pay tribute to the men and women who have endeavored to overhaul our intelligence agency from a repressive state security system into a democratic intelligence community. In this regard, allow me to express on behalf of the South African intelligence community and my own behalf, our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Ambassador Bailey, this the in a- the as the former leader of the
Honourable members, it's Tanya Lyons again. It seems that we've lost our connection again to the chamber. We're trying to re-establish it.
Okay, Minister, there's no problem. Yes. Is it possible to get some kind of an assurance from IT that this problem has been sufficiently attended to and there will be flawless proceedings? Honorable members, it has been brought to my attention that I don't understand that side, my brother. What has been brought to my attention, honorable members, is that the IT is struggling with the stabilization of the connectivity. They are requesting us that we do continuation, so it might be stop and go. Minister, as we move forward, it's a matter beyond our control. Where I'm sitting here, I'm not in control at all in as far as IT problems are concerned. So I can't give a guarantee, Minister, to you that if you come back here, there will be no problems again or glitches. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, House Chair. As a former
Chair.
IT specialist in the country, I want to request that you stick to your original decision so that they stabilize the network, because it is very unfair on me when I'm presenting a budget speech and I keep on being disrupted. They can tell us in the 5 to 10 minutes that you had initially taken a break, whether they're getting the network stabilized, they can get the support, we can help them call the right people to give them reinforcement to sort out their network problem instead of me being disrupted. Is really unfair, because this debate will not be effective, because members will not follow what I'm saying and they will not make the points, because it gets continuously interrupted. If they give us the 10 minutes, we can make the calls for them to be supported by the organization that supports them, which we previously led. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. There was another member saying chair on the left.
Yes, Chair, it was a point of order online.
Okay, who is that?
Honorable Bergman,
Oh, Honorable Bergman, what is the issue?
your favorite. Chair, just to request that maybe what we should be doing then is possibly the people online maybe move to forestry, and that we scrap the online parts of this debate, and you just, so that not to delay anyone further.
Well, you are not very clear, but I'm not an IT specialist. So the best that we'll see what we can do with your proposal. What we will do under the circumstances, honorable members, I think let's suspend the proceedings for full 10 minutes so that our staff here can go to IT and get an assurance from IT whether they've been able to re-establish the connection. Yes, they have done that, but assurance that it will not be destabilized again. So for 10 minutes, we are suspending the proceedings of the House. We will resume the proceedings in 10 minutes. Thank you for your understanding, honorable members.
Recording stopped.
You can move around and, yeah, for health reasons. following the proceedings of this budget debates. The media, everyone else, it was beyond our control. An apology to you, honorable members, and we also want to thank you for your patience. We now have an assurance from the IT section that the system is back, it's up and running, and there'll be no glitches going forward. Honorable Minister, I think what we'll then do is that you'll have to start afresh from the beginning, and we reallocate your time, which will be 25 minutes. So over to you, Honorable Minister. You can now present.
Ningabi Nemon. Honorable House Chairperson, thank you. Dimacheron. Honorable Deputy Ministers in the Presidency, Noma Sonto, Motaung, and Kenny Murolong. The Chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, Honorable JJ Jerome Make. The Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Doris Lakude. The Honorable Members of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. The Coordinator of the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, NICOC, who's also Acting Director General today, Ambassador Tony Gap Musimang, the executive team of State Security Agency and NICOC, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. As I take this podium to table budget vote 8 of the State Security Agency, I'm reminded of the journey our national security system has traversed over the years. I am reminded to pay tribute to the men and women who have endeavored to overhaul our intelligence agency from a repressive state security system into a democratic intelligence community. In this regard, allow me to express on behalf of the South African intelligence community and my own behalf, our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Ambassador Billy Masehla, who passed away on Sunday, 14th May 2023. He was a South African intelligence officer. He served this country as the second Director General of the South African Secret Service in a democratic South Africa in 1996 to 1999, and also served as the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, a freedom fighter who led the student and youth movements as a founding member of the Congress of South African Student Causes that was instrumental in the formation of the South African Youth Congress, SAICO, and a former leader of both the ANC Youth League and the African National Congress National Executive Committee. I have many anecdotal stories to tell about the late Ambassador Billy Masehla and the democratic intelligence community. However, my memory of him is invoked because we are tabling this budget vote when events of the past, some of it recent, have thrown us back to grapple with the question of what are the expectations for a democratic intelligence community. Florina Christina Matei and Caroline Halliday, when writing about the role and purpose of intelligence in a democracy, contend that, I quote, even the most successful democracies face a conundrum in regard to the intelligence function, because whereas democracy calls for political neutrality, transparency, and accountability, effective intelligence agencies must operate in secrecy, close quote. It is the balance between transparency and accordance on the one hand, and the effectiveness of the state security agency that we seek to restore in this regard. To manage the trade-offs, we are resetting frameworks to manage the work of the State Security Agency at 3 levels. First being the process by which certain types of information, for example, security threats, strategic threat estimates, or national intelligence estimates, future capabilities projections, indication and early warning systems, amongst others, are required and requested, collected, analyzed, and disseminated to decision and policy makers. Second, it is the organization of the units that execute the intelligence function, including the interagency arrangements. We will give attention to the distinction between strategic units, operational units, and tactical ones. And third, being the product that is distributed to decision and policy makers. Cheers. To give effect to this and to put in place the requisite institutional arrangements, Cabinet will in the coming week consider the General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill for submission to Parliament. Amongst others, the bill seeks to restructure the intelligence service to provide an institutional architecture that enables effectiveness and efficiency and establish the domestic intelligence service and the foreign intelligence service. B, remedy the defects of the functioning of the signals intelligence capacity as confirmed by the Constitutional Court. C, address the weaknesses identified through FATF process, including measures to combat money laundering and terrorist financing.
Recording in progress.
By empowering the national security structures to investigate and conduct security assessment if a person or institution is of national security interest. D, strengthen measures to regulate and coordinate the private security industry as part of a broader national security approach. And E, put in place measures to regulate the conduct of former members of the service and others with access to intelligence information. Honorable members, the proposals in the bill were benchmarked with legislations in other jurisdictions whilst upholding the context and principles of our Constitution. In addition, and in acknowledgement of the critical and central role that of NICOG in matters of national security, it remains our priority to strengthen and appropriately align the capacity of the Office of the Coordinator for Intelligence in line with the recommendations of the high-level review panel, as well as the expert panel report on the July 2021 unrest. Such intervention will drastically buttress NICOG's ability and capability to deliver on its mandate. On the security environment front, as we are reorganizing the institutional arrangements, including through the legislative amendment process I've just referred to earlier, our country is faced with multiple challenges that may pose national security threat. First is the crime and corruption. Crime and corruption are threatening to reach endemic levels. This ranges from organized crime, transnational crimes, petty crime, and threats to community safety, as characterized by high levels of gender-based violence and femicide. The nature of the crimes in South Africa point to a problem that must be addressed holistically and not only through law enforcement measures. The partnerships with communities to rebuild a societal framing that is anti-corruption and anti-crime has become urgent. As the police service and community leaders work to establish community policing forums at every village, townships, and suburbs, the community must frown upon the celebration and hero worshipping of criminals in communities and refuse to pay bribes to receive a government service, including the paying of cold drink to the traffic officers when we have violated the road traffic laws. At an enforcement law level, we have learned many lessons. We have learned many lessons through the events of July 2021 riots, and paramount to this is the value of integrated law enforcement and partnerships with the both private sector and communities. The capacity of an integrated law enforcement service and effective partnership was demonstrated during the 20 March 2023 protest action. In this regard, we are integrating law enforcement operations to become intelligence-driven and prosecution-focused, while the police lead the execution. Our priority in this regard is to urgently combat organized crime in all its form and content, improve community and public safety, and restore a conducive environment for industry to conduct business without fear of the possibility of extortionists. In addition, the State Security Agency continues to work with other law enforcement agencies to implement the National Anti-Corruption Strategy and will continue to support the work of the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, NACAC, as it relates to our mandate. The second challenge is the electricity shortage or load shedding. Regular load shedding at high stages will continue to have a severe impact on the economy and any other government initiatives at advancing the developmental agenda. It also puts a dent on government efforts to attract and unlock the much needed foreign and domestic investments to revitalize the sluggish economy. Furthermore, continued severe load shedding creates an environment for criminal elements to operate in the cover of darkness. The combination and effect of these negative factors have the potential to lead to a socially and politically unstable environment by making communities and civil society at large susceptible to mobilization against government by elements with nefarious agendas. Given the centrality of ESCOM to South Africa's electricity generation, transmission and distribution, a negative impact on its operation poses a grave threat to the economic security of this country. Thus, any threat to the viability and the operations of ESCOM is accorded the requisite priority in terms of our work. It is against this backdrop that the security structures have identified key threats against the performance of ESCOM, requiring urgent attention or intervention under the auspices of the National Energy Crisis Committee, NECOM. I must emphasize that the establishment of NECOM, the activation of the National Joint Operations and Intelligence Structures, net joints, and on energy, and the appointment of the minister responsible for electricity provides a direct response to the challenge of energy security, which should soon yield tangible results. While this and the assurance by ESCOM that the country will not face an electricity blackout signify an improvement to the threat picture, the intelligence service has advised that a permanent solution to this electricity crisis is required as a matter of urgency. Unemployment. There is an old proverb that says, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. More so when the idleness is a result of lack of opportunities for young and energetic members of society. It is important to note that initiatives to address unemployment are starting to bear fruit. For the 6th consecutive quarter, the quarterly labor force survey has reported an increase in the number of employed persons, with more provinces and sectors contributing to the employment creation. We have also noticed trends in economic infrastructure crimes, which can be deemed deliberate acts of sabotage. We continue to both monitor and work with other law enforcement agencies to prevent such acts of sabotage. The FATF grey listing. While the grey listing of South Africa by the Financial Action Task Force, commonly known as FATF, is a cause for concern, it has, however, assisted the government to intensify its efforts towards strengthening interventions against money laundering and terrorism financing. Amongst the noted measures undertaken is the finalization of the National Risk Assessment, approval of the National Counterterrorism Strategy, the enactment of the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating Terrorism Financing General Laws Amendment Act laws, as well as the protection of the constitutional democracy against terrorism and related intelligence services. Through the coordination of the intelligence security structures at the NECOC level, these interventions have significantly improved the threat picture, particularly on matters of illicit economy, terrorism, and money laundering, amongst others. Furthermore, state security agencies, together with other law enforcement agencies, continue to develop and implement other measures to ensure that South Africa's territory is not used to plan, facilitate, or carry out acts of terrorism and acquire or move, store, and use funds in support of terrorism. The National Intelligence Estimate. While there are these threats facing our country, the NECOC, through the National Intelligence Estimate, NIE, has assured us that the various government responses continue to mitigate against the threats and drastically altered the threat landscape in a positive way. In addition, law enforcement agencies have their finger on the pulse of any situation that may threaten national security. However, more still needs to be done to assure conditions of safety and security, particularly on the levels that drive economic growth, such as energy security, food security, and water security in the backdrop of disasters that befell our country since 2020, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, the July 2021 unrest, catastrophic floods, the energy crisis, and the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Cooperation with foreign intelligence services. In my language, they say, there is a false impression that is created that this government have adopted an anti-USA posture. I must clearly indicate that we have cooperation agreements with the USA on areas of intelligence sharing, training, cybersecurity, counterterrorism, amongst others. As recent as March 2023, a high-level delegation represented at the highest level was in the USA, and this was a follow-up to the visit by the US counterparts in November of 2022. We must also assure South Africans that genuine intelligence from the USA or South Africa in each other's territories is shared through proper channels and at all material times. South Africans must remember that the US remains South Africa's largest trading partner, and we value that relationship highly. A better South Africa, a better Africa, my apologies. The African Union's aspiration for silencing the guns remain threatened with the resurgence of conflicts in Eastern DRC, Mozambique, and Sudan, amongst others. In addition to derailing the economic development of our continent, these conflicts pose a threat to South Africa's national security, as this will exacerbate our immigration challenges and increase the burden on the services the state provides to citizens and refugees. We must also acknowledge that the movement of refugees also include the movement of unsavory elements such as criminals and terrorists. We are continuing to work to ensure we protect the territorial integrity of South Africa, and the activation of the Border Management Authority, BMA, to operate as an independent entity as from the 1st of April 2023 is a major progress in the effective management of immigration in our country. The collaboration of the BMA with the intelligence structures has intensified our strategic response to challenges of border security and migration in order to safeguard our sovereignty and territorial integrity. In addition, the intelligence service continue to support the efforts of our government in dispute resolution initiatives and the evacuation of our citizens whenever it is necessary. Honorable members, in trying to respond to the challenges of the 21st century, the agency has a duty to evolve through innovation and modernization, and to invest in skills and resources that are commensurate with the challenges of the times. It is important to internalize and appreciate the fact that the state security is the first point of support and the last point of security of the country. As a result, we have begun with the process of professionalizing, repositioning, and building the capacity of the agency to mitigate against global and domestic security threats and be in par with our global counterparts. This process will entail modernizing our systems, improving our services and operations, skills training and development, address capacity challenges through recruiting young professionals, and broaden our skills base. Our staff is our main assets. We'll improve staff wellness to ensure that the agency still remain the employer of choice within government. This includes, amongst others, adopting new technologies, investing in state-of-the-art infrastructure, and adopting new and innovative methods of conducting our trade. This initiative will also include the recruitment and training of young people into the fold of intelligence, because as the saying goes, the future is young. Our focus on young cadet is predominantly in the areas of the skills of the future, such as data mining, analytics, and artificial intelligence, amongst others. I'm honored to report that the Inspector General of Intelligence has assured me that their office has put measures in place to ensure effective oversight of the services. He is finalizing methodologies and frameworks to support and monitor the work of the intelligence services across the board. Honorable members, as we present this budget to yourself, we are confident that the future of South Africa remains safe. Our responsibility is to ensure the security of our people, is to keep the South Africa in general as a safe place for business, for residents, and for all, as it was aspired by our forebears who aspired for a prosperous, non-sexist, non-racial, and democratic South Africa. In doing our work, we also cooperate with other state agencies to advance and protect our national interests. Proactive and responsive intelligence is key to ensure that the safety and wellness of our citizens. The global security threats are multifaceted and dynamic, and that requires cooperation amongst nation states. In mitigating transnational threats such as terrorism, cybersecurity, organized crime, and human trafficking, illicit financial flows, transborder crimes, such as vehicle theft, illicit cigarette smuggling, wildlife crime, and drug trafficking, amongst others. We will continue to strengthen our cooperation at a regional level, continental, and global level. We have memorandums of understandings and bilateral cooperations with numbers of countries across the globe. This includes China, Russia, Italy, Germany. I've already mentioned our cooperation with the United States of America. In the coming years and decades, and in addition to the raging wars and conflicts around the world, humanity will face more intense and cascading global challenges, ranging from disease to climate change and to the disruptions from new technologies and financial crises. These challenges will repeatedly test the resilience and adaptability of communities, states, and the international system, often exceeding the capacity of existing systems and methods. Unfortunately, South Africa will not be immune and is not immune to this threats. This calls on nations around the world not only to collaborate in programs to respond to these challenges, but to find new ways and strategies to mitigate against the escalation and proliferation of the catastrophes. Honorable House Chair, as part of the global community, we must continue to monitor such global events to ensure that our national interest, including our security, is protected and advanced. The global transition from unipolar to the multipolar world also remains our focus area. And we have also noted the shift from multipolar to a unipolar society. However, we need to remain vigilant for the survival of our state and the sovereignty of our state at all times. In this regard, we will ensure that we position ourselves and our national interests in the manner that whatever outcomes of these global shifts will remain ahead of the curve. The ongoing war in Ukraine presents a number of challenges globally, and South Africa has not been spared from it. In the past few months, since the outbreak of the war, South Africa has been impacted by the rise of energy prices, food, inflation, interest rates, thus impacting on the cost of living of our people. South Africa will continue to support the efforts to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and as a country and a global player, we believe that such a conflict should be ended through peaceful negotiations and engagement, and not through South Africa taking sides. I'd like to conclude as I table this budget for the House to deliberate on and quote our late and former president, the first president of the Democratic South Africa, President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Safety and security do not just happen. They are the results of collective consensus and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in our society, a life free of violence and fear. I'd like to extend my words of appreciation to the members of the Standing Committee on Intelligence for the work they continue to do to support our efforts all the time and to give us guidance, and appeal to the continued partnership as we do the last stretch of the 6th administration. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the management of the State Security Agency and NICOC in the support they continue to do to offer the ministry support and the work that we do to keep our country safe. I'd also like to thank the staff of both NICOC and State Security and the entirety of the law enforcement agencies that have continued to partner with us to ensure we keep South Africa safe. As we move into the last leg and the last lap of our 6th administration, the responsibility to keep South Africa safe has not become less important. In actual terms, it has taken a podium of highest in becoming important in assuring the prosperity of our country. Honorable House Chairperson, I thank you, Ndoribua Akensa, Ke a leboga.
Thank you very much, Minister Dona. Just keep it in your mind that at the end, because you are going to do the wrapping up of the debates, you'll be having 1 minute, 22 seconds when you do the close, because you saved some time. We will now proceed to Honorable J.J. Mike. You've got 15 minutes, Honorable
Thank you
Member.
very much, Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Ministers, officials from the agency, my colleagues, and everybody else. Chairperson, every year around this time we do budget votes. We all know how important this is for the functioning of the government departments. But in our debates, we seem to be repeating whatever we said the previous years, which means that even if there are some improvements in the service delivery by the departments, the progress is somehow slow. The constitution of this country, which by the way is one of the very best in the whole world, is the basic legislation that governs the security services. Chapter 11 of the Constitution lays out the principles governing national security and also provides for the establishment, structuring, and conduct of the security services, encompassing intelligence, defense, and police services. Section 198 prescribes that the following principles, among others, govern national security in the country. National security must reflect the resolve of South Africans as individuals and as a nation to live as equals, to live in peace and harmony, to be free from fear and want, and to seek a better life. The resolve to live in peace and harmony precludes any South African citizen from participating in armed conflict, nationally or internationally, except as provided for in terms of the Constitution or national legislation. National security must be pursued in compliance with the law, including international law, and national security is subject to the authority of Parliament and the National Executive. The Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence is established in terms of Section 2 of the Intelligence Services Oversight Act of 1994. The purpose of the committee is to perform an oversight function over the intelligence and counterintelligence functions of the services, which includes State Security Agency, the Intelligence Division of the South African National Defence Force, that is Defence Intelligence, and the Intelligence Division of the South African Police Service, which is known as Crime Intelligence. Even though not categorically mentioned in the Act, the committee also performs oversight on the Financial Intelligence Center. Section 3 of the Oversight Act provides that the committee, amongst others, in exercising the oversight responsibility, obtain, audit, and other reports from the Auditor General and consider financial statements of the services. Consider, review, and make recommendations about cooperation, rationalization, and demarcation of intelligence function performed by the services. Refer any matter in relation to an intelligence activity which the committee regards as relevant to the promotion and respect of the Bill of Rights to the South African Human Rights Commission. The establishment of the JSCI, as opposed to what existed during apartheid era, was to prevent the abuse of the intelligence services by the powers that be. It ensured civilian oversight of the services in a non-partisan manner. This budget vote debate takes place after what has been widely termed the July 2021 unrest. During this unfortunate period, two provinces of our country were engulfed with wide looting and unrest, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. During this time, two of our intelligence services, State Security Agency, the South African Police Crime Intelligence, mandated to deal with our domestic issues, were riddled with instability at senior management level. In the SSA, there was no permanent DG, and most of our senior managers were acting. We are happy to announce that the situation has changed with the appointment of Ambassador Thembi Majola as the DG. As the JSCI, we have complete confidence in our ability to lead the SSA into greater heights. The Intelligence Division of the Defense Force must gather, correlate, evaluate, and use strategic intelligence for purposes of ensuring national security. The cutting of its budget makes their work very difficult. The high-level review panel was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa in June 2018 with the key objective of enabling the reconstruction of a professional national intelligence capacity for South Africa that will respect and uphold the Constitution and the relevant legislative prescripts. To this end, the high-level review panel recommended, among other matters, an architectural review of the intelligence community. This review included the following: the separation of the SSA into two services, a domestic and a foreign service, with maximum or preferably total separation. Pending due delays in tabling the General Intelligence Law Amendment Bill, my comrade, Honorable Zaguta, will elucidate more on what we have done in this regard and our plan of action in the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence on behalf of Parliament. Locating the coordinator for intelligence and the NICOC analysis arm in the Office of the Presidency. NICOC now plays a crucial role in the National Security Council established by the President. Formally re-establishing a National Security Council established in December 2019. Refining the mandates of the intelligence departments, including defense intelligence and crime intelligence, to ensure minimum duplication and maximum coordination, pending due to delays in the tabling of GILA. As the implementation of the recommendations of the high-level review panel report has been done in tandem with the implementation of recommendations made in the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegation of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector, including organs of state reports, popularly known as the Zondo Commission reports. Several findings were made with regard to intelligence services. Most of these were already known to the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. As a committee, we were already hard at work, and the findings were in the main similar to those made by the high-level review panel report. The Chief Justice's acknowledgement of the committee's work bears testament. Once the report was finalized and handed to the President, he tabled his implementation plan to Parliament. On the 31st January 2023, Parliament referred the implementation plan of the executive to various committees, including the JSCI. Committees are required to report back to Parliament on a quarterly basis. We're in the process of ensuring that our report is consistent with Section 6(3) of the Intelligence Services Oversight Act, which states that nothing shall be included in any report of the committee, the inclusion of which will be more harmful to the national security than its exclusion will be to the national interest, close quote, before tabling to Parliament. I think most people are not satisfied by that quote. Now I would like to focus on 2023 budget vote for SSA and Defense Intelligence. While I will leave the South African Police Crime Intelligence to my comrade. At the JSCI, we commend the SSA, DI, and Sub-CI on the submission of well-crafted annual performance plans. We have come a long way, and finally we have APPs that are compliant with prescripts and follow the SMART principle as contained in the National Treasury regulations. The APPs of this financial year illustrate the importance of Parliament work as the custodian of oversight accountability. Through our critical, robust engagement, the SSA, Sub-CI, and DIA submitted APPs and budgets which are compliant with all relevant national planning prescripts. We are pleased to report that the filling of critical leadership positions is beginning to yield stability within the service. Against this background, that the SSA has repositioned itself to ensure that it can provide critical intelligence to decision makers, and that intelligence is central to all government planning. I'm looking at my time. Defense intelligence. For defense intelligence, we are pleased that the long outstanding issue of its headquarters has been resolved. We thank the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans and the former Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure for listening to the concerns of the JSCI and coming up with workable solutions for the headquarters for DI. We are pleased to report that DI will move into its new headquarters during the second quarter of this financial year. We are, however, concerned with the continued shrinking of the South African National Defence Force budget and DI as a component. We have noted that SANDF is continuing with its ordered commitments despite the shrinking budget. The shrinking budget has impacted on SANDF's readiness and its threat, and it's a threat to national security and the territorial integrity of our country. The lack of resources has impacted on the implementation of the 2015 Defense Review, which would have addressed the critical state of decline of the SANDF through the proposed milestone to rebuild the force. During the sixth parliamentary term, a stagnation in the defense allocation has been observed, resulting in a real percentage reduction in the defense allocation. The allocation to DOD has grown only marginally from 47 billion to 51 billion in 2023. In real terms, as adjusted for inflation, this signifies a significant reduction in the country's defense allocation over the MTEF. The defense allocation is expected to grow by only 0.9%, signifying a continued real percentage reduction in the allocation. South Africa's defense spending falls well below the norm adopted by many states of 2% of the GDP spending on defense. South Africa also compares poorly in regional terms in terms of defense spending as a percentage of GDP, with the current defense allocation comprising only 0.73% of the GDP. The decreased budget allocation occurs while the employment of SANDF continues. Examples of the increased utilization of SANDF include the 2018 and 2019 employment of SANDF engineers to address the pollution of the Vaal River, the 2019 employment with the South African Police Service to combat crime in the Western Cape. Several large-scale employments in 2020 and 2021 as part of efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Large-scale employments in 2021 to Gauteng and KwaZulu in response to widespread civil unrest, and the 2022 employment to KwaZulu-Natal following flooding in the province. The above employments are additional to SANDF's standing deployment for border safeguarding of South Africa's land borders, as well as employment of SANDF outside South African borders in Democratic Republic of Congo and Mozambique, amongst others. My time is finished. The ANC present the budget.
Re leboga motlotlegi Make, re lebogile thata. Sebui sa rena se se latelang is Honorable T. Kwahla. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Okay, it's Kwahla. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Being made the minister in charge of state security seems to me to be a part-time job. Sometimes they last in their position as much as a year, sometimes a few months, but it's commonly accepted that the moment they start to both understand and do the job and show any inclination to do the right thing, to claw back the hundreds of millions looted via the State Security Agency, out they go. So it's a reality check for our latest minister in case she imagines that anything she do will be valued, or indeed that she'll be in that position next year after the election. But then again, none of you will. It took years to complete the high-level review panel report, in which we first saw proof of what was an open secret, the looting via the State Security Agency. Now then came the Zondo Commission revelations, and then nothing. Where is our money? We need it. Our schools, clinics, hospitals, police stations, roads, bridges, sewage systems, and of course we have no electricity. It's all collapsing, and not a single cent of those billions has been recovered. I said it a year ago, let me say it again. I've laid criminal charges against Arthur Fraser 2009, 2022. Well, I may as well have gone to watch Guardians of the Galaxy, because there's more action in that than we've seen against state capture since the Zondo Commission. Instead of occupying a correctional services cell, Fraser was saved by our Pala Pala Prince and made the boss of correctional services, using that position to release Jacob Zuma. Then, in a move worthy of the longest running soap opera in the world, when refused a second term, he threw the president under the couch. You can't make this stuff up. Now, despite the various methods of looting widely discussed and even immortalized in black and white in the president's keepers by Jacques Poe, still Fraser walks free and the money has disappeared like service delivery in an ANC-run metro. The Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence is invisible. You don't know when we meet, what we discuss, where we go, who we grill. There are attempts made by some in Parliament to force us to reveal agendas and other details, but the answer is no. This committee never leaks, which means we are told literal state secrets, and then it's up to us to decide what to do with them. But what I can tell you is that this committee has finally come of age and has drawn a line in the sand. We've clawed in permanent and utterly brilliant staff, despite every effort made to stop that happening. And today, departments that try to slip dangerous moves past us get sent packing. Departments that ignore our instructions are hauled over the coals. Those without top secret security clearance are turned away at the door, and deadlines are demanded. Now, this is why I live in hope that someone, somewhere, sometime will actually face the music for the billions stolen. Neither crime nor defense intelligence have regulations, as after 25 years, that was the responsibility of many of those ministers, some 7 or so in the past few years, every one of whom failed to see their creation. In contrast, when we asked the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, NICOC, to draw up the long-awaited regulations, they did them. They all come before the JSCI. On another positive note, we went through the interviews for the Inspector General of Intelligence done in public, and I was particularly pleased that the best person for the job was appointed, one Imtaz Faisal, and he's doing a sterling job. He steps in where the committee may not. Politics doesn't enter the room when we do. We work as a team. Three of us from the DA, that's me, Honorable Dirk Stubber, and from the NCOP, the Honorable Kathy Loviskachny, together with the ANC, and no other parties bothered to attend. The security of our country is, however, our united goal. Equally, we speak as one in the condemnation of, for example, the Treasury when it slashes maintenance budgets by 2/3 and then tut-tuts when the presidential plane can't take off again. You can't have it both ways. You can't take a penknife to a gunfight. You can't send dedicated personnel into dangerous situations with antiquated equipment. Let's see the bigwigs in Treasury use 3G from last century, while the criminal syndicates use 5 and now 6G. This is the sort of thing our crime intelligence, defense intelligence, and state security personnel are having to deal with. This is no secret. It's spoken about openly, and it's a crying shame. At the Zondo Commission, we heard our suitcases stuffed with money walked out the door of the State Security Agency. We know about the countless millions looted, and we hear today of the antiquated equipment across the security cluster. Well, join the dots. Despite the high-level report, despite the multi-million rand Zondo Commission, those behind the looting are free as birds. The high-level report, has it been fully implemented since 2018? I'm sure you can guess the answer to that. And you wonder why South Africans are skeptical every time a commission is established to form a subcommittee to investigate the possibility of a working group aimed at looking at whether or not corruption is an issue. Think about it. If the outcomes of these reports and commissions are left untouched long enough, they gather dust. Public and media interest wanes, parliamentary terms end, MPs leave, and will move to new portfolios or go into government. And then what? Mission accomplished. I see so many dedicated South Africans come before this committee. Those in defense intelligence never complain, although their workload is trebled and their budget slashed. They never, ever complain. The State Security Agency grinds along, and as far as we are allowed to know, does its best despite the Amabongane judgment. And crime intelligence, well, it's never been the same since General Jacobs was removed by the last police commissioner. Indeed, it's a shadow of its former self, and it will take years to recover. But we can't grill the new National Police Commissioner about it because, as the whole country knows, he doesn't have clearance. He can't even come into the building. Around the world, equivalent agencies are accountable to Congress or the Senate or various houses. And yeah, not anything really once a year where there's a redacted report handed to Parliament, but that's about it. Now, I often think that the veil of secrecy should be lifted a tad, and it's how we come to be accused of providing arms to Russia. Things like that dodge our committee completely, and presumably we as MPs are supposed to believe that not one of those entities we oversee had anything to do with it, any knowledge of it at all. I believe a massive amount is done without our knowledge as a committee, hidden from us, hidden from you. Our strange invisible committee is not a nice to have. It's crucial to our nation and our reputation globally. Although there may be one or two in the National Assembly who had knowledge of the Simonstown deal, so much more at this stage is hidden away. However, slowly but surely, this committee is making headway. We deal with the uncomfortable issues so that you don't have to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Remember, our next speaker is Honorable Chiro. 7 minutes, Honorable Chiro.
Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, Julius Sello Malema, Deputy President Niko Shivambu, the officials, commissars, fighters of the Emancipation Movement. Today, like every other Friday, as declared by the EFF, is EFF Red Friday. We encourage all our people, especially young people who are not registered to vote, to do so expeditiously, for we have an appointment with removing the ANC government from power next year at the most pivotal elections since 1994, and ensuring that the red flags go up at the union buildings in the year 2024. House Chair, in rejecting this budget, we want to take this opportunity to reflect broadly on the state of our intelligence agencies in this country. Despite a slow pace in transforming the broken state security agency since this administration began in 2018, particularly the much needed separation of domestic and foreign branches, and dismantle the chances of executive abuse that were attained under the previous administration, state security still seems largely purposeless and unproductive. After what is an embarrassing display of incompetence following the July unrest in 2021, our intelligence agencies have still to unlock the several infiltrations, misinformation, and information peddlers within its own ranks. However, what should worry South Africans is the continued rise and growth of sophisticated organized crime, which has recently been revealed by the Thabo Bester escape from prison. There is growing evidence that criminals, through highly placed and important personnel within the correctional services, continue to facilitate sophisticated criminal operations that undermine the credibility of the entire criminal justice system. Criminals are able to leave maximum security prisons to perform heinous crimes and then come back to their prison cells without any trace. This is the biggest security breach and will result in the general populace losing total confidence in the criminal justice system. The Thabo Bester escape, above everything else, tells us that we do not have intelligence agencies that are able to pick up and prevent such breaches to our national security. Another related aspect of this phenomenon is the growing power of assassination networks in our country. These networks extend to the prison system. One can today rely on a convicted criminal serving a long sentence in a maximum facility prison to perform an assassination outside and then go back inside into the prison. It is also a fact that these assassination networks are commanded or even used by some of which are in the top echelons of security forces to settle their own differences amongst themselves and at times to eliminate their own opponents. A country with an inability to neutralize organized assassination networks is a country with a totally dysfunctional and an infiltrated intelligence capability. In addition, the growing power of criminal Komtsotsi gangs that operate in pursuit of the parasitic local government tender system are continuing to erode service delivery in many communities across the country. It is also a fact that there are many organized gangs masquerading as the community, demanding 30% from any local government contractor who must provide services in the given community. These gangs enrich themselves by blocking progress to deliver services in exchange for pure bribes that have nothing to do with the communities, which reveals some and not all of the service delivery protests as disingenuous. Our intelligence agencies have denigrated as they cannot predict and totally undermine the efforts of these activities so as to allow service delivery to be able to occur. In fact, this is one of the many key reasons that the EFF believes in building internal state capacity so as to not rely on the tender system to deliver services. We must then ask, what is the money dedicated to our intelligence agencies really doing? What do majority of the people at the State Security Agency, crime intelligence, and their associated institutions get paid to do? The Pala saga may carry answers for us. Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence refused to hold an open investigation inquiry into the Pala matter, in which serious allegations of abuse of the very same agencies by the sitting president were made. Once more, Parliament failed to hold the executive accountable, choosing instead to shield the president from scrutiny and pretend as if it is business as usual. This attitude is also seen with regards to the problems around the electricity crisis. We have allowed a total disabling of Eskom in a general plan to privatize it, the greatest national security that this country has ever seen since the 1980s. The multiple compounding stages of load shedding all work towards one goal: to surrender Eskom to private hands at the cost of the stability of South Africa itself. And our intelligence agencies and all other institutions related to it are either complicit or are completely clueless about it. That is why we reject this report.
Thank you. I now call on Honorable Nkosi Buthelezi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Iqembu lenkatha liyakwemukela ukugcizelela kwamgcinimafa ekuqinisekiseni imizamo yonke yokulwisana nezenzo zobugebengu obuthinta izimali nezindlela eziningi zokubambisana nenhlaka eqondene ukuze kunqotshwe ngokupheleleyo udaba lokushushumbiswa kwezinkece, ukuphekela ikhundla nezenzo zobugebengu. We therefore welcome the additional funds allocated to Program 9 of National Treasury's budget. Nokho-ke sihlalo izenzo zobugebengu kuyinto ebeka izwe lethu engcupheni, sekuyinto ejwayelekileyo kakhulu ubugebengu obuhleliwe, nokufanele umnyango oqondene njengalo ukugweme ngaphambi kwenzeka. Iqiniswe ngelithi ngeke vele kungabi lula egelekeqeni ukuthi singabe involved in these shadow economic activities and crimes if inhlaka eyimiselwe ukubhekana ngqo nazo zibonakala igxega futhi inganikezwa usizo olufanele nezilidingayo. If our leaders are embroiled in scandals after scandal, in laundering money, corruption, and boast procurement deals, and becoming entrepreneurs without any consequence for their ill actions, how can we expect ordinary South Africans to take a stand against corruption and unlawful activities? Nokho-ke sihlalo umnyango nomthwalo omkhulu emahlombe awo, hhayi nje ukufeza lokho omisuka ukwenze, kodwa kakhulu ukubuyisa isithunzi sawo nethemba ezakhamuza kuleli, ngoba iningi labantu bakithi sebelibona izwe lethu njengezwe elingenamthetho kwamachanca impunzi idlemini. Njengoba-ke sihlalo nongqongqoshe eqeda kusho la ukuthi benza imizamo yokulawula indlela yokuyiphatha kwey'nkampani zokuphepha eziy'mele, lokhu into encomekayo, kodwa ngakolunye uhlangothi ikhomba khona ukuthi uma abantu bakithi bethemba ukuyivikela bona, kuyasho ukuthi izwe lethu selehlulekile, abasenakho babelethele. Nokho-ke sihlalo, we have seen a major failures of state security in proactive actions against cyber crimes, for instance, and furthermore stopping movement of funds earmarked to be washed, evading taxes through offshore banks and companies, and stopping funding of illicit trade and multiple high-value items. What we need FICA to do is to stop placing the administrative burden on the non-financial accountable institutions, as this hampers millions of small, medium, and micro businesses from conducting their business. This must be left to banks, financial, and fiduciary institutions. The institutions are in far better positions to report, investigate, and assist Treasury and state security in stopping the illicit flows of funds at the source. The failing of our legislation above and beyond that of trying its level best to combat financial criminality, we have unfortunately exposed ordinary South Africans to get involved in these crimes. Ordinary South Africans with large sums of money flowing from their accounts are not being closely monitored. For example, Honorable Chairperson, people like ourselves as politicians were deemed as politically exposed, and every movement in our accounts, for example, the lousy amount of 5,000 rand will be closely monitored and will be called to account, while thousands of millions are being transferred by ordinary South Africans because less accountability is expected from them. We must address this with the agency it deserves to stop this cancer that is actually engulfing our country. The IFP, therefore, Honorable Chairperson, supports the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ATM. AIC. Hope. And I'll call Honorable Stuber.
Chairperson, for the financial year 2022 to 2023, the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence aligned the outcome of its oversight mandate with the recommendation of the high-level review panel report and the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture findings. Proclamation 59 of 2009 that was issued by former President Zuma gave rise to the amalgamation of the National Intelligence Agency, NIA, and the South African Secret Service, SAS, into the State Security Agency, SSA. In 2009, the concept of state security was introduced and shifting the focus from national security and the well-being and the security of the people to the protection of the state. Since then, the service went into a downward spiral where the environment became toxic, which gave rise to self-interest and enrichment together with the abuse of state's resources and finances. This situation necessitated the establishment of the high-level review panel to enable the reconstruction of a professional national intelligence capability that would respect and uphold the Constitution. State capture necessitate a judicial commission of inquiry, and together with the high-level review panel findings, the commission highlighted some of the following issues with recommendations to Parliament, such as the minister's involvement in operational issues, illegal operations by the SSA that actively further the interests of the ruling party, and operations by the Special Operations Unit of the SSA under Ambassador Thulani Lomo. A number of concerns, cash withdrawals were noted, such as 38.5 million by Minister Mthlobo, 9.2 million with no verification also by Minister Mthlobo, cash stolen to the amount of 145 million. The principal agent network of Arthur Fraser and the COVID operations amounting to 225 million. Disappearance of firearms, including rifles and submachine guns under the watch of Fraser by Thulani Lomo as head of the SOU. Irregular recruitments and appointments to the service. Abuse of the vetting system, where Lomo established a parallel vetting system that was unlawful with regards to the National Strategic Intelligence Act 39 of 1994. The Commission also made recommendations with direct bearing on the JSCI, such as the Parliament to consider the amendments of Section 6.1 of the Intelligence Oversight Act 40 of 1994 that require the outgoing JSCI to report to Parliament on the period preceding the elections, the introduction of a new General Intelligence Law Amendment Act, GILA, and the JSCI was also tasked to determine whether legislative changes are required to strengthen supporting obligation. These recommendations by the Commission resulted in the Parliament's implementation plan of 3 November 22 and was tabled on 31st January 23. This was the first Parliament where the first JSCI has a full complement of support staff to assist the committee on issues that were overlooked in previous years. The support staff are doing a sterling job in order for the committee to execute their oversight mandate. The APPs of the services presented to the JSCI revealed that the services are still in contravention of adherence to certain norms and standards which need to be corrected as per the Zondo Commission. Since 1994, the South African Police, Crime Intelligence and Defence Intelligence have had no regulations in terms of the National Strategic Intelligence Act, Section 2A and Section 6, to conduct security vetting. We are also still awaiting the finalization of overdue GILA. The independence of the Office of the Inspector General of Intelligence and the Office of the Interception Center must also still be legislated. The poor resourcing of foreign stations by the SSA must also be addressed. There is a need for urgent legislative amendments and requirements for the Secret Service account, which are used to fund COVID operations. The fund is governed under an outdated act. In this regard, the SSA provides funding for the Central African Republic Embassy in Pretoria, which emanated from a decision by former Minister Mthlobo during September 2014. The project not only led to the purchase of a chancery and a residency, but also paid for the vehicles used by the embassy. The SSA was also responsible for operational running costs and salaries of personnel. All this was paid by the taxpayer. The project was terminated by Director General Ambassador Majola on 30th November 2022 after they had spent over 61 million. The question thus arises, to what extent does secret funding still exist in the service where monies are spent on secret projects that might not be legal? I also want to express my condolences to the family of Ambassador Willie Masetla as DG of the former National Intelligence Agency. I thank you.
Thank you, member. And I'll call on the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Deputy Ministers, my colleagues, the family of the intelligence services. Let me start by extending our sincere and heartfelt condolences to our leader, our stalwart, the Ambassador, Billy Masehla. We salute the service that he did to his selfless service to our country. May his soul rest in peace. Also extend our condolences to the family of Honorable Aplain, the NCOP member, who was also the member of the EFF. May their soul rest in peace. Honorable Chairperson, this budget vote takes place in the backdrop of the implementation of the high-level review panel report recommendation, as well as those of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, corruption, and fraud in the public sector, including organs of state. As Parliament, we are currently seized with overseeing the Executive's Action Plan report, which outlines the recourse to the recommendation made in the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture. The Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence is one of the committees to which the report was referred to. A critical finding in the high-level review panel report was that there is a need to refine the mandate of the intelligence services, particularly defense intelligence and the South African Police Services crime intelligence, to ensure minimum duplication of and maximum coordination amongst the intelligence services. It is worth noting that GLAB has not been tabled in Parliament by the State Security as we have previously requested. While we acknowledge while we acknowledge that the minister is doing something about this, but as a committee of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, we have took a decision to make sure that we introduce GLAB as a committee bill. We've waited for quite some time, Honorable Minister, without it coming forth. So we cannot reverse on this decision that we have taken. All processes are in place. So we have the necessary support to do this. We know what is it that needs to be done on that bill. So that is the decision of the committee that we have taken after so long. So our aim is to make sure that by the end of this term, this would have been done by us as a committee. Honorable Chairperson, the GLAB is the cornerstone of resolving most of the challenges faced by the intelligence services, ranging from the separation of the State Security Agency into the domestic and foreign branches and redefining the mandates of sub-CI and DI. Without GLAB, the intelligence services will not be able to fully implement the high-level review panel report directives, as well as the recommendations of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture allegations, Honorable Chair, corruption, fraud in the public sector, including the organs of state. We are pleased to report that most of the issues we raised in the budget vote debate last year as the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence have been resolved. Some include, in the sub-CI, instability in the sub-CI, Honorable Chairperson. The instability in top management of the sub-CI have been eradicated. The instability was exacerbated by the pending appointment of the National Commissioner. In March 2022, the President appointed General Fani Masemola, which paved the way for the appointment of the Divisional Commissioner of the Sub-CI. In December 2022, Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo was appointed as the Divisional Commissioner, which has ensured stability in the Sub-CI. Two, tensions between the ministry and Sub-CI management. The tumultuous working relationship between the ministry and Sub-CI, of which the letter indicated in the APP, was a risk to its effectiveness. This has been eradicated. We now have a fully functioning Sub-CI. The decentralization of Sub-CI, the Joint Standing Committee was concerned with the improperly constituted planned decentralization of Sub-CI. The new structure is currently undergoing consultation before coming back to the Joint Standing Committee for consideration. We are pleased with the decision taken previously by the former National Commissioner to consult further in this regard. Lack of detailed budget in the APP. We are pleased to say that Sub-CI now fully complies with government regulations regarding APPs. The cross-border crimes, these are the concerns that we had as a committee. We indicated that there was need to look into cross-border crime as border provinces such as Mpumalanga. We have many border provinces, but those that we went for oversight as a committee was Mpumalanga and KZN. They are faced with serious challenges. We all know as members of this committee that serious crimes are committed around the borders of these two provinces. Cars are being stolen and crossed and taken across the borders of these provinces. So with the budget cuts that my colleagues echoed earlier in the debate, the budget cuts are not assisting the agencies in fighting crimes, especially the South African National Defence Force, who are also mandated to deal with crimes across our borders. As one of the oversight responsibilities, we undertook an oversight visit to Umhlaba Uyalingana area, including Kosi Bay port of entry, as well as Gate 6 and Gate 8 in the border with Mozambique. Although challenges remained, we are happy to report that progress has been made. On the abuse of Secret Service account, in light of the findings of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, we requested Sub-CI to draft and implement internal controls for the fund. Audit findings, Sub-CI has started to address all audit findings to ensure adherence to all legislative and regulatory frameworks. Honorable Chairperson, just to remind the House that I'm focusing mainly on South African police crime intelligence. Honorable Chairperson, the committee observed that Sub-CI is poorly regulated. Of concern was that the division was not prioritizing legislation and regulatory amendments in its APPs. The identified problem is that the division's mandate, as set out in the National Strategic Intelligence Act, is unsubstantial. Its duties and powers are ill-defined, and there are barely any checks and balances on the authority. This was concerning for the committee, particularly because Sub-CI employs incredibly intrusive techniques that must be precisely defined and regulated. The committee informed the leadership of SABCI that internal rules can be disregarded, hence they do not qualify as adequate controls. The committee has since ensured that in the 23-24 APP, SABCI prioritizes the drafting of regulations to ensure full compliance with the law. For the 23-24 financial year, we have observed the following, which will be our focus area for oversight amongst others. Drafting of regulation, legislative amendments to amend, to mandate and function. The 23-24 APP was significantly different from previous submissions. SABCI has illustrated the importance of critical oversight, as the improvements in the APP are as a result of the committee's critical oversight and ensuring that SABCI is compliant with the national prescripts. The leadership of SABCI ought to be commended for the diligent incorporating all oversight matters raised by the committee throughout the year. The increased targets ought to have a positive impact on the work of SABCI. The procurement focus is noted, albeit with concern, as SABCI has a history of procuring equipment without the required deviations. What is concerning is that the deviations has not been planned to acquire the said equipment within the financial year. This annual performance plan was crafted in the backdrop of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. 2021-22 Audit and Risk Committee report and Auditor General South Africa's report, which all detailed the serious concerns around the legislative lacuna, lack of regulation, and poor policy formulation and implementation. The Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence has, through its constitutional responsibilities, ensured that SABCI is adequately regulated to ensure compliance with the rule of the law. Honorable Chairperson, I just want to also emphasize that as the committee, we don't play politics. Our concern is the security of our country. What we are raising here are the concerns that we have as a committee, other than coming to the podium and grandstand as members of this committee. And also I want to commend the members of the ANC and the DA for always attending meetings of this committee and making sure that in the meeting we discuss, we don't only criticize, but we come up with solutions as a committee. When we go on oversight, we really do what is expected of us, what is mandated of us by the Constitution as members of the Parliament, and also by the Intelligence Act. What is it that is expected of us? So, Honorable Chairperson, I really want to applaud the work that we are doing behind closed doors. There is great improvement that we are seeing as a committee. I mean, those of us who are attending the committee meetings. We don't wait for the media, for media reports and run with them and bring issues that are irrelevant to the debate of the APPs and the budget of the department. Honorable Chairperson, other matters that are being raised are being attended to by the relevant state law enforcement agencies. So we are not here to grandstand, honorable members. We are not here to discuss everything and anything under the sun. We are debating the budget vote 8 National Treasury of the State Security Agency. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Minister. Honorable members, this venue is very small and the acoustics are not optimal. Please, we allow interjections, but please keep it at the lower decibel level. Thank you.
Honorable House Chair, thank you for the opportunity to close the debate on vote 8 of the State Security Agency. Honorable House Chair, I was once told that successful nations are those that are constituted by patriotic citizens. It is pleasing to know that the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence works in an non-partisan manner, but not partisan manner, to promote the security of our nation because it's in the best interest of all of us. But I will not do justice to this debate if I do not acknowledge the appreciation and the acknowledgement by Honorable Kola Barnett that the governing party will return to power post the 2024 general elections. Even if I personally do not return to this position, it is immaterial because a mark of a good leader is the system and the institutional arrangement one puts in place for a system to function without the influence of a personality. And therefore, it should not matter who is the minister on the position. What matters should be the programs, the systems, and the plans of actions that are put in place. And as history has taught us in this environment, that it has not always been like that. And the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence worked with the agency to improve that system to function effectively. But hardly 11 weeks of me taking the job and doing all in my power to make sure that the GLAB is finalized and it goes to cabinet next week. I must report that it has passed the cabinet subcommittee. I find myself confronted with a committee decision that in my language, they will say, Ungara chao nurata, kana, wokotsibola magaga, hadzira ya farabana. I do not know if the translation services are getting it right.
No, we get it, it's fine. Okay.
Basically, I'm saying to the Joint Standing Committee and members, and I appreciate the support you have given, that I feel abandoned and I feel rejected by the Standing Committee, because when I've just taken over the job and I've spent sleepless nights with the team to make sure the nasal consultations are finalized, the Standing Committee does not want to give me an opportunity, even if it means giving me a deadline to deliver on the GLAB. And chairperson of this Joint Standing Committee, I'd like to plead my case like any other child who cannot be abandoned by their parent. For working with us and supporting the budget vote, because it's part of that patriotism. I will not know what to say to Honorable Chira, because a mark of a good leader is not the rhetoric they spew when they take the podium. It's the responsibility they take in making sure that they safeguard democracy, the work of the democratic institutions, including the committees of parliament. And the non-attendance of the EFF to the Committee of Parliament means it is difficult to have an engagement with the EFF around the weaknesses within the intelligence service or any other government service. And I would like to implore members of the EFF to take their responsibility seriously in terms of holding us to account, because that's the hallmark of a democracy, that's the hallmark of accountability and transparency. It means those who are charged with the responsibility of holding us to account do their part and support us to improve the service. And I like the spirit of the discussion that has been taking place here, the recommendations that have come through to say what is the work that still have to be done, what is outstanding, and the acknowledgement of the progress of work done. During the speech that I delivered, the policy statement that I made, I've indicated that we collaborate and cooperate with the United States of America in terms of intelligence sharing, intelligence gathering, and any other matter that is constituted in our bilateral agreements and memoranda of cooperation. And I've also alluded to the fact that intelligence information is shared through proper channel and through our liaison officers. And we have not had an incident that the intelligence service of the USA has shared information with us and we disregarded that information. We have not had an incident where there was something amiss and the intelligence service of the United States worked against our established protocols. And we have said on our part, both on the terror alert, that there was no such intelligence shared, including there was no other intelligence shared as it relates to the vessel that docked at Simonstown. And we've got that on record, and they have acknowledged in terms of the right channels and protocols that there was no intelligence shared with us. But we appreciate the intervention and the decision of the President of the Republic of announcing a commission of inquiry to deal for the finality of the matter on the Simonstown vessel, the packages it took out of this country, if any. We have also, at a government level, indicated that there was no authorization from the National Conventional Arms Control Committee that authorized any sales of weapons to Belarus, to Ukraine, and to Russia. And that was also explained to the members of parliament through a parliamentary question that were asked by the Democratic Alliance. And we appreciate such questions because they allow us to clarify our position in government. And therefore, any posturing on this matter is because we are in that period that ourselves as politicians call a silly season. But I'd like to caution that on matters of state security, we cannot afford to have a silly season because that means a collapse of our national security system and our national security architecture, and therefore a threat to the democracy that we seek to achieve and protect at all times. Ours is a responsibility that goes beyond party political allegiance. Ours is a responsibility not only at the standing committee level, but also as the member of executive assigned with the responsibility of overseeing state security, or what is commonly known as the intelligence services. That is not about party political matters, it's about patriotism, it's about the republic itself. It is for that reason that during the debate, I indicated that state security or intelligence service is the first point and the last point of defense for this country, because there is no service assigned in this country to protect both the territorial integrity, but also the sovereignty of the republic and the constitution of the republic that is not dependent on the work of the intelligence service. It is for that reason that we need men and women of high caliber. We need men and women who are ready for the cause, who are ready to sacrifice arm and limb to make sure that the republic comes foremost to anything that they do. And I must indicate that even though there are weaknesses, there have been improvements, but they have been effective and supportive members of the service who have continued to do their work, even in difficult times. The fact that ourselves can gather in this room and debate this budget vote, irrespective of the phases that we've passed through, and the service has not had a total collapse, is because there are those who have given themselves to make sure that the service remains running. And I appreciate that you appreciate that. As we walk towards this journey, for the last 8 months in our term of office, both as parliamentarians, but also as members of the administration, we have a responsibility and we must acknowledge that the global geopolitical environment is changing. And we'll find ourselves, given our position of strength in the continent and the fact that Africa is the next theater of growth and development, we have the responsibility to make sure that we do not find ourselves as proxies to other to fights and wars and battles that have nothing to do with the international interests of South Africa, the region of SADC, and the continent of Africa. We are not only a theater of politics and other global interests for its own sake. We are a theater of interest because of the economic resources and the endowments that our continent has, the size and age of our population. In the next 7 years, we're going to be the second largest population, and it's estimated that in the next 15 years, we'll be the continent with the largest population in the world. That means we are going to be the largest consumers of services and products manufactured anywhere else, but we would prefer that those services and products are manufactured in our continent, in particular driven by South Africa, to make sure that the aspirations of our forebears who talked about African unity can be achieved. We will continue to rely on the support of the honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee and honorable members of Parliament for their full support and guidance, and also to hold us to account, but also to guide our work. Sometimes will require patience, sometimes will require pushing and nudging to make sure we deliver what is collectively our responsibility. And we have one responsibility. Our sole responsibility is the Republic of South Africa and her people. Nkosi sikelele i-Afrika, Modimo hlonolofatsa Afrika, Ntate boloka setjhaba sa South Africa. Inkosi.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The plenary will now rise.
Recording stopped.
Well spoken, Minister, well spoken, well spoken.